Good evening and welcome. This is The Chase, Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program. I'm Andy Hodges. Zimbabwe's harmonized elections have come and gone. The winners have won, the losers have lost. It was almost 3 months ago that Zimbabweans across the country exercised their democratic right to vote and elected their desired candidates for local authorities, parliamentary and for the president for the next 5 years. Just to recap, ZANU-PF's Dr. Emmerson Mnangagwa won the presidential vote by 2,350,711 votes, equating to 52.6%, beating Nelson Chamisa of Triple C, who got 1,967,343 votes, translating to 44%. For the National Assembly seat, ZANU-PF won 176 seats and the Triple C 103. Everyone elected has been sworn in as per the Constitution. The cabinet was announced as well as the vice presidents. A new government was formed and is in place. The election itself, though, drew divided opinions among voters, political parties, observers, and some other stakeholders who cited alleged irregularities. Let us not forget, however, that other stakeholders gave their stamp of approval on the election, calling it free and fair. It is noteworthy that despite these challenges, a new government started their mandate in earnest. But just 2 months down the line, fissures and political challenges have arisen, especially in the legislature, with the recalling of some Triple C members of parliament by Sengezo Shabangu, who claimed to be the Triple C interim Secretary General. New reports have surfaced that Shabangu has even gone further to allegedly recall councillors, especially from Zimbabwe's second largest city, Bulawayo. And even the new young female mayor of Masvingo has not been spared, on the basis that both members of parliament and councillors are no longer members of the Triple C party. The only body mandated to run elections in Zimbabwe is the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. So how did they run Zimbabwe's recent harmonized elections? Did they stand up to accepted electoral practices and norms? Did ZEC run the election freely and fairly? What about what critics call the ballot chaos that engulfed the country on election day? Were voters disenfranchised, especially opposition voters? What lessons has ZEC and Zimbabwe learned from the second election held under the Second Republic? I speak to Ambassador Rodney Kiwa, Deputy Chairperson of the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, for a discussion on poll management, looking beyond election 2023. Join me and my guests tonight live on The Chase. Welcome back. You're watching The Chase, Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program. I'm Andy Hodges. This is ZTM Prime, broadcasting to you live from our studios in Harare, Zimbabwe. To our viewers, please join us this discussion via our social media platforms, our Facebook page, Zim Papers TV Network, or on X, formerly called Twitter, at ZTM Prime. We would like to hear from you. Now, please remember that all views expressed on The Chase are those of our guests and do not reflect those of Zim Papers 1980 Private Limited or indeed of ZTM Prime. Our discussion, poll management, looking beyond election 2023. Ambassador Kiwa, ZEC Deputy Chairperson. Sir, good evening and welcome to The Chase.
Oh, thank you very much, Andy, for having me.
Ambassador, let's start with something that's very topical at the moment, and obviously something Zimbabweans are talking about, and that is the recalling of both members of parliament and councillors by the Triple C's alleged interim Secretary General Sengezo Shabangu. What role, if any, does ZEC play in such recalls? Are you at any stage asked to verify if the person carrying out the recalls is a bona fide member of that party, is legally obliged to do it? What does ZEC get involved in when it comes to recalls?
Oh, thank you very much, Andy. That's a very good question, and I would like to appreciate the opportunity that you have given me to explain on some of these issues. ZEC does not, as enabled by the law, does not have the power, the authority to recall anyone from parliament. That is done by the parties that are represented in parliament themselves. ZEC only comes in when it is informed by the Speaker of Parliament, by the President of Senate, to say vacancies have come up in whether be it in the elective legislature or whether it's through the proportional representative system, either in the National Assembly or in the Senate, they inform us. And we are obliged, in terms of the law, to then, in consultation with the Office of the Minister of Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, the Attorney General, to take steps to then hold the by-elections.
Let's talk about that,
That's
sir.
where we come in.
All right, let's talk about this. So, okay, the Speaker of the House, let's talk at Parliament. The Speaker of the House has accepted the recalls of the CCC members. The Minister of Local Government has confirmed in Parliament recently the recalls. So what, they've advised ZEC, I understand, about the recalls, particularly of the CCC members. So what happens now? I mean, do you start the process of planning for new by-elections in the constituencies concerned? What exactly does happen?
Correct. Once it's literally an instruction to say the following vacancies are now obtaining in Parliament, National Assembly or Senate. So we then start the process by taking the necessary measures in relation to what is required of us in terms of the law, that is nomination days, the actual dates where we propose to say, in this particular case, for instance, like let's talk in practical terms. We are proposing that the elections for these recalls take somewhere between the 6th and 9th of November. So
you're saying that these by-elections for the recalls you propose to the
we propose.
You propose 6th to 9th November for the by-elections.
Yeah. So, or more specifically, the by-elections relating to Gutu West and the other local authority elections, those have been put together for and settled for November 11.
November 11th. So
Yes,
6th to
yes.
9th, or for some, it's November 11th.
Definitely.
Those are the so Gutu West, definitely 11th.
Exactly.
But the other ones you propose and you're waiting for
We're
feedback.
proposing, in fact, it's wrong for me to say 6 to 9. It's around the 16th to the 19th of November.
Oh, 16th to 19th of
Somewhere there,
November, not
somewhere.
6th to 9th, 16th to 19th.
Yeah, it was the 11th that we're having the
Now, obviously, we've just literally had a harmonized national election. So the question then, I suppose, is: do you have the money? Are you capacitated? Do you have? Are you able to do it?
That is a very big challenge to us, because what was provided for us is what we used during the last harmonized elections. What then it means is that we have to go back. Our experts, our staff, the secretariat is working on the requirements, what is required, and then we go back to Treasury and say, for the purposes of conducting these by-elections, we would require so much in terms of cash, in terms of personnel, in terms of all the logistics.
Because this wasn't planned for, of course, previously. You couldn't say how many recalls there were going to be, technically.
Yeah.
Now, there were reports, media reports, that indicated that an individual had claimed that 70 ZANU-PF members of parliament had been recalled. Have you been advised about that?
No.
Nothing at all.
No, not that I'm aware of.
Now, looking at what transpired during the election and the recalls, critics contend that this is further proof that ZEC is doing the ruling party ZANU-PF's bidding and not taking into account submissions made by other political parties. They say, as I've said to you before in numerous interviews, that ZEC is an appendage of ZANU-PF. Your comment?
Absolutely, I totally reject that assertion, that accusation, if you will, because there is a clear legal framework within which ZEC operates, and that is not a secret to ZEC. All the political parties know exactly what are the requirements to participate in this election, right? The Electoral Act is very clear, the Constitution is very clear, and we are as much concerned about the integrity of not just our institution, but us as individuals, right from the office orderly to the chairperson. We are concerned that we should come out with a product which meets the expectations of Zimbabwe, that we produce credible elections.
Ambassador, critics have described Zimbabwe's recent election as, and I'm going to quote a famous Western movie, I'm sure you've heard of it, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. The good, peace reigned throughout the land when the election was announced, during the campaign period, on election day or days, and of course post-election. The bad, and some call it ugly, the so-called chaos that was exhibited on the election day with regards to non-delivery of ballots and other election material in specific constituencies, especially Harare and Bulawayo. They state that the 23 August election was a logistical nightmare on ZEC's part. They say bluntly that ZEC failed the nation. Your comment?
I don't subscribe to that characterization. Why? And some of the logistical challenges that we face, because now we have submitted our report as is required by the law to Parliament through our line ministry, the Ministry of Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs. Once that is tabled, I can then be able to come back and,
okay, but broadly you can say.
But our elections were held in terms of the law, that we followed that we did. And I can tell you, we hold our heads very high because we did not do anything. Yes, people have got opinions, but people are entitled to evaluate I think the way they do. I have no problem with that. But I've got a problem when people create their own facts which don't relate to exactly what they're going. Opinion they can have, but they must not create their own facts.
Ambassador, on this show, The Chase, and in fact in interviews held with you, you assured me and the nation that ZEC was ready to roll, so to speak, that everything was in place before polling date, that you saw no major issues that could occur. I remember we spoke about this often. Obviously, Ambassador, I could probably say that you may have been wrong about that. But the fact is this, that I ask, how did ZEC get themselves into such an alleged mess, that some critics call it? How did or could ZEC delay in delivering, for example, voting material in Harare and Bulawayo at areas like Chiredzi, Gokwe, places that you can say deep in the rural areas, got them early?
Without going into detail, right? To deliver a credible electoral action, it takes all the stakeholders, right? The political parties, the Zimbabweans as individuals, the citizens who got the right to vote, other government departments, service providers, and so forth. And unfortunately, in this particular case, one service provider let us down.
So you're saying, but however, you're saying that you cannot really right now get into all the specific details because of this report that's tabled. And only after that report has been, then I can get you back on the show and we can seriously interrogate you on some of those issues.
I can, yes.
Ambassador, I want to look at the numbers that supplied or allegedly supplied by ZEC. Election notice, you said that you printed 7,126,600 presidential ballots, roughly 7,098,000 for the National Assembly, 6.8 roughly for local authorities, against a total of 6.6235 registered voters. That gave you a contingency of 7.6% for presidential and National Assembly and 3.5% for local authority papers. So, of course, first I wanted you to verify that that's a true statement. And secondly, if it is true, the question then becomes, how could there possibly have been shortages of ballot papers?
That was precisely what the challenge was. We engage Andy Hodges to do this job for us, assures us that they can deliver on that, and Andy doesn't deliver. Right?
Okay,
right?
I see you're dying to tell me more, but of course you're constrained by the report.
Yes. So what do? We then have to activate Plan B, and that's what we did.
Okay, right. Now, some sections, especially opposition political parties, said the so-called logistical challenge was too convenient. They say it happened in so-called opposition strongholds and so was a deliberate ploy by ZEC to target opposition voters, especially in Harare and Bulawayo. They state that ZEC's actions disenfranchised their voters who possibly did not come back on the second day to vote, as they state they lost confidence in the electoral process. They point to the lower voter turnout as compared to 2018 as evidence of this. Your comment?
Again, I would not subscribe to that characterization. why, as you will see in the report, and which I'm, like I said before, I'm reluctant. Actually, the voter turnout in those very places which are being described as having been denied their right was actually very high in terms of the registered voters in those areas, as much as 98% in some cases.
Okay. Yeah. Now, on election day, there were numerous reports in the media of exit poll survey tables stationed near polling stations. Some stakeholders put the blame squarely on ZEC's shoulders. Did you receive any reports of this? And further, does ZEC have any legal mandate to do anything about this if it was proven to be true?
No, as long as any activities which don't contravene the electoral law which means beyond the radius of 300 meters, we have no control over that.
But they did say some of these tables were closer. What if they? This is reports we're getting.
I'm not aware of that. And this precisely, again, these are the issues that they should present us for us to be able to say, at polling station X, voters or whoever, institutions, organizations, were inside the 300 perimeter, then we should be able to deal with that.
That becomes a ZEC issue, and you now can deal with that.
Because then I would want to know from the presiding officer why that was the case.
Okay. Now, Ambassador, during the election, we witnessed arrests of civil society members allegedly for parallel voting tabulation. In their defense, there is a public video of ZEC chairperson Justice Priscilla Chigumba after the 2018 election in which she suggested that parties or civic groups should do their own parallel tallying. What is the position on parallel vote tabulation or collation in Zimbabwe? Is it allowed or is it not allowed by law? Some may ask exactly what were these CSOs arrested for?
I don't have the competence to respond to that question with regard to the arrest of the.
But the parallel voting side, tabulation?
From my experience, not just here in Zimbabwe, but everywhere else, it does take place. But in our case, they have no right to. They cannot announce the results.
No. But they can tabulate, but they can't. But I know that you said that before. You said they can't announce, but they can tabulate.
Correct.
Okay, so you're not aware really of what the police arrested the CSOs for? Are you saying it had nothing to say? ZEC had no input into that at all?
No.
Now, it's almost 2 months since the election has been held, of course, the harmonized election, and certain political parties are calling for fresh elections without ZEC, alleging that you are biased and not fit to conduct a free and fair election. In fact, they're calling for the total disbandment of ZEC. What is your response to that?
Well, they are entitled to their opinion. We can't stop from there, but what we know is that we are perfectly legitimate. We are there in terms of the constitution of this country, properly constituted, properly appointed, procedures followed, and our legitimacy is beyond any reproach. As to calling for elections, I don't know. I mean, as far as we are concerned, because we conducted what we consider and very satisfied that these were credible elections, free and fair. And I can tell you, Andy, to this day, I'm not aware of any court cases or any evidence that has been brought to our attention to say, here, you failed the electoral process by doing X, this, or by an error of omission or commission. I am not aware. I'm not aware. Nothing has been brought to our attention. And so, as far as we are concerned, no, we did our job.
So basically, if there weren't any court cases or laws against the election, you're basically saying, well, what did we do wrong?
Exactly.
Okay. It's time for us to take a breather. You're watching The Chase, Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program. Our discussion, poll management, looking beyond election 2023. After the break, we continue our discussion with Ambassador Rodney Kiwa, Deputy Chairperson of the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. Don't go away. The Chase, we'll be right back.
Every village has a scandal, and in each case, the chief has to restore sanity to his realm. from adultery. The supernatural. Avenging spirits. To disputed paternity.
Vabereki vako kuti ndiye murume wako, kumba kwenyu ndeupi?
Wavaiziva ndeuyu asi zvakapera. Pari zvino ndeuyu.
Ndeuyu?
Anozikamwa sose mukwasha kucha kwenyu.
Asati akakuzikamwa.
Catch all this intriguing reality on Village Court, 7 p.m. every Monday on ZTN Prime.
Welcome back. You're watching The Chase, Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program. I'm Andy Hodges. This is ZTN Prime, broadcasting to you from our studios in Harare, Zimbabwe. To discuss poll management looking beyond election 2023, with me in the studio tonight is Ambassador Rodney Kiwa, Zimbabwe Electoral Commission Deputy Chairperson. Ambassador, there were reports that the European Union intended or is intending to cut its $5 million US aid support to the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, ZEC, in response to its handling of the August elections. What does this response from the EU mean for ZEC? Is it a true reflection of the way you handled the August election or not? What does it mean going forward in terms of funding for any upcoming elections?
Thank you very much. Well, any withdrawal of funds is always regretted because you would need to have something to put it in there. But I want to assure you that that does not impact in any shape or form the operations of ZEC. Yes, we welcome them to support us in the way they can, they do. But it's also their freedom to withdraw if for one reason or another they think it's no longer serving their best interest to continue to support
when they
us.
give the money, let's say someone like the European Union or even any other donor or supporter of the election, I would obviously assume that it can't come with strings because, of course, we're talking about an election. But what is the process of that? Does it come through government? Is it given directly to ZEC? Are you told to spend it on certain things like voter education and so forth?
No, we have it. The EU has been supporting us through a basket. The basket that involves the European Union, it involves the Japanese government, it involves the UNDP, and the French government has put in some money there. Right. Now, it's called the Zim Eco Project, where it has got a board, a board of directors made up of ZEC, in the name of the chairperson, and in her absence, I act on her behalf, and UNDP also co-chairs. Now, below that, we have project officers who are the technical people who work out on what and so forth. So the board will approve. But then, what tends to happen is that the contributing member to this basket has got a say to say, well, maybe at ZEC we want to build more warehouses.
For example?
Yes. And they may say, well, our contributions are not for building warehouses.
Okay,
Right?
I'm with you. So,
And
you,
so
you know,
we-
you want to build houses, but you're saying that's not what we're giving you the money
Yeah,
for.
exactly.
So they
we-
deny it.
Yeah, we have to agree.
Okay.
But what I would want the public to know is that our cooperation with the governments of France, the governments of Japan, with the United Nations through UNDP are continuing.
Okay.
Yes.
But so has the EU withdrawn? Have they formally announced that they would withdraw their money?
Yeah, they did through the papers, but I'm not too sure whether we have actually received. I guess if we have to receive it, it would be through Foreign Affairs.
Okay, I got you. Now, election day or days are done and dusted. That's the common colloquial phrase. National Assembly results were viewed on the screen at the command center. And of course, ZTM Prime, I was there on the National Command Center. We had a live feed going out to all the country. And of course, we do appreciate all of ZTM Prime viewers for watching our election coverage. We even went all the way up to the end. In fact, we were together all those days working late into the night. In the statement after the announcement of presidential results, ZEC sort of implied that it was not compelled by law to publish V11s. You only published a land map showing the results. Some quarters have accused ZEC for lack of transparency and say this was to cover up for alleged rigging. Why did you not agree as ZEC to publicly publish V11s? What is your comment to that?
But you see, the thing is that for us to come up with the result, you must have the V11. Not only that, all the party agents, right, had copies of those who were present at each and every polling station, had the V11, right? They had them, right? In fact, I can tell you this, that without naming, one political agent of one party did not even have them. And he was asked by the chief elections officer to say, but why didn't you bring them? You are asking questions about what about this on the screen? Because you flash these things, the results on the screen, and each and every party agent present would comment to make sure that we are talking about the same, and we are the totals that were coming up are in sync with what they have. And this particular one said, oh, well, I didn't think, I didn't bring them. So
Okay.
are you serious? Right? So when I was being briefed, I said, I mean, is that the attitude of somebody who is serious? No, it's not.
Okay, but even having said that, though, what harm would there have been in ZEC publicly issuing them anyway? I mean, what would be the harm?
Yeah, but you see, the thing is that we have to work things in terms of what are the cost implications, what difference, what impact is it going to have if we do X instead of doing Y. And in our judgment, we didn't think it affected in any way the result as it is, because the result was verified in front of all those present. And we could only make the announcement when everybody, each and everyone, has said, yes, we are satisfied, you can go ahead. And this is precisely why we ended up announcing at the time that we did announce.
I remember because you had said 7 o'clock and then it moved to 9 and then it moved to midnight.
Exactly, because we had to address to make sure that verification is thorough.
So let me get this straight then. You're saying that on the date when I was there, of course, National Command Center upstairs where the direct counting was happening, you're saying that during that process, each and every political party, whether it's ZANU-PF, Triple C, MDCT, whoever was standing, Dr. Maduku's party, NCA, you're saying they were all there. And each and every single one of them had to verify and sign off and say this, they agree to the results. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, correct.
And there was not a single political party that did not and said we're not going to.
Not to my knowledge, unless they were not there.
Okay, but were they all there? Do you know?
I cannot say it 100%, but I'm sure Up to 99% were there.
Okay, now there was a flurry of social media reports and reposts that alleged that ZEC was recalling polling agents to re-sign some forms at multiple polling stations across the country. There was also allegations of boxes being opened, ballot boxes being opened, agents being forced to sign blank V11s.
And I will not dignify that falsehood with the response. No.
Nothing at all.
No, how can we do that? No. I will not, dignify that with the response.
Now, we have seen and heard reports of mainly opposition polling agents that they did not sign or refused to sign forms V11s or V23s. First of all, of course, is that true? Was that the case in some areas? Further, what actually happens if an agent refuses to sign? If they say, no, we're not happy with this, I'm not going to sign. Are the implications on this for ZEC and, of course, the contesting parties who refuse to sign?
No, it's not our problem with ZEC. The expectation is that every participating candidate or political party has to take a keen interest on how this whole process is carried out right from the polling station throughout to the end there. So if certain political agents were not present at that, it's not.
No, but let's say, for example, everyone counts. I'm a political party, and I say I'm not signing this, okay, for X, Y, Z reasons, okay.
Yeah, yes.
What are the implications? I mean, surely then does that allow the whole party to contest?
The process cannot be held back by one or two. No, then the next remedy, if you, for one reason or another, you feel you cannot sign, and then my expectation as ZEC would be that I'll be seeing you at the electoral court.
Because obviously then I would have a
Yes,
grievance which I would then have to raise somewhere.
Which is the correct way of doing things.
Okay.
Right.
I want to talk about the Observer Mission reports immediately after the election. Well, they were held, I think, while the elections various Observer Missions came out with their preliminary reports. And of course, as you know, it created quite a furor in Zimbabwe. They cited irregularities, among them delays in delivering ballot papers, lack of transparency regarding the printing of ballot papers, among other issues. The SADC Observer Mission said the elections fell short of the standard and guidelines of the Zimbabwe Constitution and SADC principles. How does the Observer Missions talk to ZEC? How does ZEC talk to the Observer Mission reports? What is the relationship, or what does it mean to ZEC?
I am not going to, at this juncture, discuss the Observer reports, but what I can tell our viewing public is that, yes, we do engage them. There are guidelines that SADC has. Don't forget, I was once a member of SEAC, the SADC Electoral Advisory Council. I'm very familiar with those guidelines. Now, one thing that I would want to emphasize here, particularly when it comes to SADC principles and guidelines on the conduct of elections, it says, they emphasize that within your law, within your legal framework. You Zimbabweans, you tell observers that this is the legal framework. These are the enabling administrative arrangements. This is the enabling act. This is the constitution. Have you followed that in the conduct of elections?
But didn't Zimbabwe sign the SADC guidelines? So wouldn't that be an agreement that they're going to adhere to those guidelines that are there in paper?
And we did, right? We did, and we did. I mean, I would wonder, because, for instance, like just to use one example, when you make reference to a decision of the court, right? Are you serious? You are asking us? No. We have no say whatsoever. As ZEC, we are decision takers. I mean, we implementers. The courts in this country decide this is the route you are going to take. We follow that, unless if we have to challenge, we have to challenge. But the decisions of our courts are final, right? Now, you want to point a finger at us to say X did not qualify because it's just ridiculous to be honest. And our expectation is that this is really where we were disappointed, if I might say, to say, how can you come and tell us that we did not follow our own constitution without elaborating. We want to question the legality, the validity of the decisions of our courts. What kind of observation is that? That was completely offside. But like I said, let's wait, and at the opportune time, then we can go observation report by observation
That
report.
would be, yeah, because I think that's a discussion that we have to have now, particularly once your report has been tabled,
Exactly.
it's been approved by Parliament, accepted by Parliament, then I think we're going to get that report right now, and we and you will sit down and probably go through it as much as we
right.
can.
So in ZEC, yes, we are alive and sensitive to perceptions. How do people see? So we have to be transparent in order to manage those perceptions, right? But if people come up with opinions which are not supported by facts, and when I want to say facts as they are, not facts as you create them. You are entitled to an opinion, Andy, but you are not entitled to your own facts. It's not correct to say such and such a station closed at such and such a time when it, in fact, it is not the case, and so forth. So you get those things. But suffice to say, at this juncture, I promise you that once our report has been tabled to Parliament and the owners of the report have discussed, I'm willing to come back so that we can go and
well,
do
I'll
some of
hold
those
you to
things.
that, Ambassador, definitely.
Yeah,
now, I mean, you yourself have said, and in fact, I suppose every electoral body has said that you can never hold 100% perfect election. So I'm sure that some of the Observer Report's comments were valid. I mean, I'm not sure which ones.
Of course,
I mean, so therefore, how do you as ZEC look at incorporating those into future elections? Is it down to you? Is it down to the government? I mean, I know if it's technical, I'm sure it's easier for you. But if there's some sort of more legal issues, what do you do? In your report, do you actually say, look, these may be valid and we should do something about them?
A good point, Andy. We as ZEC belong to a number of institutions, for instance, like the Electoral Commission's Forum for the SADC countries, SADC itself, the AU, the United Nations, Commonwealth, and so forth. And we are committed to borrow some of the best practices in the world. Because you see, the whole idea is that each year, each electoral cycle must be an improvement on the last one. And that we are committed to do, right? So where and like you rightly pointed out, we are not perfect and we will never claim to be perfect. Yes, the shortcomings here and there. If they are pointed, and we are the last people to deny that but we will not accept untruths. So when it comes to those best practices, some of them, they are beyond us. Why? Because we can only make recommendations to say we think our effectiveness, our efficiency can be improved by such and such legislative reform. It's up to.
I'll give you an example. I mean, this is outside of the Observer Mission report, so this isn't there, but something that we picked up from political parties where you gave them the voters' roll. But of course, the law doesn't say you must give it to them in a what's the word, in a tabulated form. They didn't know, you just gave them a roll of 6 point something million voters, but you didn't say so many here, so many there, and so on. And why? Because I remember the answer was legally we're not required to. Are these some of the things that you would look and review and say, you know what, maybe we could do it this way, maybe we could do it this way, maybe we could do that better? How does it work as a process?
Yeah, no, we listen to our stakeholders, and they are intervening factors as to why sometimes we're unable to do this or that. But mainly, it might be in terms of security, protection of the voters' roll. It might be the issue of cost. I mean, we were saying every candidate, right, who was successfully nominated got the voters' roll for free. But if Andy Hodges, for research purposes, wants a whole voters' roll, then you have
pay.
You have to pay, because there are costs associated with that. But then when people complain and some of those issues were not even raised during our multi-party liaison committees meetings.
So are you saying that no one raised the issue of saying that, okay, you've given me 6.6 million voters, but you haven't broken them down into where they are, what constituencies, all of that? No one complained about that? Because
No, but this is the
even
thing.
I heard the complaint.
Yeah, but the thing is this. Presidential candidates were given the national.
Yeah, but not where anyone was. It was just like, that's 6.6 million.
No. It's what is the technical term? But for parliamentary candidates, they were given for their constituencies.
Okay, so yeah, parliamentary and local authorities, I think
yes.
that's a bit easier,
Yeah,
because it's
exactly.
a smaller thing.
Yeah, yes,
But the
yes.
presidential, they were just given 6.6 million names.
Yes, exactly.
Not where they
because,
were, where
because
they
their
stood.
constituency is Zimbabwe.
So
yes.
yeah, but they were complaining that it wasn't breakdownable. You couldn't break it down because of the format it was given. I mean, I'm just using it as an example, of course. I mean, there are other things they raised, but I'm just saying, are those the type of things that, if it's sensible and makes sense, ZEC may then recommend to implement them? I mean,
Oh, yes.
I'm not saying you're going to do that one, but I'm just
yes,
saying
yes.
that
Anything-
this is a fluid thing, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
There's things that we could do better, things we can't, and
Yeah,
things
but
we
what I would want to say is that any suggestions, we don't raise any suggestions which will help us improve on our delivery. We welcome that. We welcome that, and like I'm saying, some suggestions might not be implemented, not because we don't agree with the suggestions, but simply because of other constraints, amongst which is
Now you have been mentioning throughout the chase tonight this issue of delivering an election report to the Minister of Justice, and then he's going to tabulate that. Maybe just for the sake of our viewers, can you talk to us about that, the legal requirements for you to do it, maybe broadly what's contained inside it? Obviously, I know you can't get into specifics, but how does that work?
The structure, I would say, in a nutshell, we would start with, for instance, the legal framework, right? The logistics, the delimitation here, that what it took.
Goes as far back as that.
And so forth. The number of constituents, the costs, the logistics, I would say.
Does it cover education, voter education?
Voter education, logistics, and so forth.
Just basically a whole essay on the election from A to Z.
All those aspects.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's a legal requirement.
That's a legal requirement, because otherwise, of what use would be the report be to our legislators if we don't cover the whole spectrum? Because, like I say, the legal framework, were there any challenges? The logistics, what were the challenges you
talked about earlier?
You were saying, why did we
not deliver those ballots and so forth? Yeah.
These are some of the things that
and of course, it's in Parliament where all legislators, not just ZANU-PF, but opposition legislators, can now thoroughly debate this report and come up with their views.
They are our lawmakers. When we go to Parliament, we are blind to political parties. What we see in Parliament are our legislators ending. That's what we see. That's what we see.
Ambassador, I want to talk about something which we did speak about prior to the election, of course, and that was the ease of voting for people living with disabilities. And because sometimes it's easy to overlook their requirements, things like Braille, things like ramps for those with wheelchairs, and some disability activists that I've spoken to and we've hosted here on ZTM Prime of the opinion that there's still a long way to go before their needs are met in as far as voting is concerned. So I suppose the question then comes back to you. Did ZEC distribute enough voting material, for example, in Braille, enough personnel to assist people living with disabilities? And were all polling stations accessible to people living with disabilities? What is your comment on this, and what is ZEC doing to make sure that in 5 years' time, it's more people with disabilities friendly, all throughout all polling stations countrywide?
Exactly. That is our aim. There are a special constituents for us, and we need to pay attention to that. And as far as I was briefed, each polling station had clear instructions to make accessibility by our citizens with living with disabilities accessible and so forth. But when it comes to the voting paper, we are something that is under discussion right now, and we hope that we should, in fact, we need to
braille voting slips, isn't it?
Yeah,
that would make
But
sense,
you see,
particularly for those with sight.
I don't have the technical competence to explain the challenges that are associated with the braille, but I am advised that what would be preferable would be the tactile or something like that, way of voting, whereby even those who are visually impaired or anything, they can do it themselves without having to get to be assisted. Because right now the challenge is that the secrecy of their vote is not 100%.
Yeah, that's paramount, isn't it?
Yeah,
the
yeah,
secrecy of the
the
vote.
secrecy
And also
of the
the
vote.
fact that they voted for the right person
exactly.
and someone
Because,
didn't vote for someone else. That's important.
An argument can be put to say that, well, there is a polling station A, and 50 people vote, and out of the 50, 3 were people with living with the disabilities. Anybody can tell to say, that's how Andy Hodges voted. And this is one thing that's why we
I see what you're saying.
exactly.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So protection. Of the
Ambassador, this is a question. We have about 5 minutes left, and I thought I wanted to give you ample time to answer this question, because obviously, again, our theme of our show is post-election, post-2023. We're going to face another national harmonized election in roughly 5 years' time. That is a fact that as sure as the sun will come up tomorrow. So I suppose the question, have you learned anything as ZEC from 2023? What can you do? What do you think ZEC can do better? I mean, I know that one person I spoke to said to me that, you know what, Andy, wouldn't it be easier for us to have electronic voting like they do in the UK, in the US, in Europe, and even in Central America? Just electronically vote, automatically it's updated. What have you learned? What can you do better?
To the contrary, I am aware that certain countries in Europe are actually going back to manual. I've had the experience also in certain of our African sister countries, the challenges that are associated with the electronic. But what I can say is we will recommend to the government, to our legislators, to say these are the advantages that come with this, and these are the advantages that come with the manual. And at the end of the day, they will decide.
All right, let's put that aside. Let's look at what's happened. Let's assume that we're going to stick with our paper voting system, our ballot system. You must have learned lessons from 2020. I mean, you must have. As you said earlier, we're not 100% perfect. You must have learned lessons. You must have seen that, look, we're a bit deficient there, a bit deficient here. I mean, obviously, the logistical issue is one area, and I'm sure you're going to put a lot of emphasis on. But what can you do better? I mean, you said that you could do better, like everyone can. What are there any particular highlights you would say to me, Andy? We could have done this better. We could have done that better.
Besides the issue of the printing of the ballot paper, I think we did everything correct. In fact, to the extent that we had all our requirements were in place. And remember when I spoke to you, when I was saying...
You assured me.
Yes, yes. But we had that one.
That was the what did I call the bad and the ugly?
Oh yes,
yeah, the bad and the ugly.
So and then of course petitions, but there's nothing we can do about it.
But again, these are issues that are covered in the report.
Yes, they are.
Unfortunately, we have come to the end of the chase this evening. Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program. I'd like to thank my guest, Ambassador Rodney Kiwa, Zimbabwe Electoral Commission Deputy Chairperson. So thank you again for appearing on the chase as usual. And I'm going to hold you to sitting here again to discuss your report once it's approved by the Parliament. I'm Andy Hodges. Goodbye, good night, and please, you all be safe.